Batters, it's Coach Jason here with you again, and today we're going to be covering batting basics. Now you might be thinking to yourself,
but Coach, I don't need to know batting basics, I already hit dingers.
And that might be the case, but wouldn't you want to refresh some things and maybe learn a little bit more about how you can continue to hit those dingers?
Okay Coach, you're right, I want to get better.
Alright ladies, the first tip we're going to talk about today is hand placement. I see a lot of younger players, a lot of older players not really sure of how their hand should be on a bat. Now what you want to do is you want to take the knuckles that you would normally knock on a door with, right? And you want to line those up together on the bat, just like this, so they make a nice straight line. Now what that's doing is it's also forming your arms in the right angle. So if you see right now I'm making kind of like the top of an A, or what I call a family tent. Lining up your knuckles helps put your arms in the right place. So when you're coiled up and ready to swing, your hands are going to be able to travel first and then the bat, and that's what we want. The second tip is how we have our feet in the box. All right, we want to make sure our feet aren't too close together and not too wide apart. We want them just a little bit wider than shoulder width apart, and we want a nice strong flex in our knees. Okay, now we have a great foundation for hitting. Make sure your toes aren't pointed towards the catcher, because if they are, that means your hips are closed and you're not going to be able to get your hands through fast enough. With that said, you also want to make sure your toes aren't pointed towards second base or towards the pitcher, because now your hips are too far open and anything outside the plate you're going to miss because you're too far open. You want to make sure your feet, your toes, are pointed towards the plate. You want to make sure they're in line together and that you're not off of that line in any way. Alright ladies, so we've talked about tips number 1 and tips number 2, right? Lining up our knuckles, making sure our arms are making that nice A or that family tent, and we have our feet correct in the box with our toes pointed in the right direction. Now before I get to tip number 3, I encourage you, find a mirror somewhere in your house, alright? Take your bat, no swinging in the house, but line yourself up in front of that mirror and see if you are already lining your knuckles up. See if you're already making that nice letter A or that family tent with your arms. If you're not, I encourage you, take the time now to start building some new muscle memory. So you know when you get out on that field, when you grab your bat, you don't have to think about what you're doing. You already have the confidence that you're doing it correctly. All right, so for tip number 3, with our foundation, with our knuckles lined up, we're gonna make sure that we're throwing our hands towards that pitch first, okay? I see a lot of ladies that they're casting their hands or they're coming through with the bat first. We wanna make sure that we are sliding our hips towards that pitch, opening our hips up, squaring them off, and we're throwing our hands towards that pitch. Okay, this should be happening. You're coiled up, you're gonna start moving your hips first, and then your hands, moving your hips first, then your hands, moving your hips first, then your hands, throwing your hands at that pitch. All right? Tip number 4, we wanna make sure we follow through. A lot of ladies, once they hit that ball, they feel like, oh, that's it, and they take off running, and that's a hit, that's fine. However, what if we followed all the way through with that hit? How much more power we're gonna generate, okay? That's gonna help that ball get past the pitcher and out towards the outfield. All right, ladies, I hope a couple of those tips will resonate with you. Maybe you can find a way to enhance your swing to be a little bit stronger and more confident in the batter's box. Make sure you're out there practicing. Make sure you're out there working hard. Keep fighting for that spot in the field, and we'll see you next time.